I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Sunday, guys. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursday and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays, which is today. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter, and welcome all. I hope you've had a pretty good weekend so far. It's pretty rainy here where I am. I accidentally made the mistake here of drinking matcha tea. I don't know if you guys have ever had that before, but I don't know, man. It was a little too strong. So a little too strong for me. So I'm actually just having decaf tea right now, like raspberry tea. But yeah, new experience. But we have a lot to talk about today, and I actually want to start off with this video here because I love this. I absolutely love this, and it's related to one of the stories we're going to discuss, doing something a little bit different today.
America, is you okay? Don't touch me. Don't fucking touch me, man. Oh, I swear to God. Watch this. For all that crying and looking sad and moping around shit, that ain't gonna stop shit, G. We still going through with the plan, okay? It ain't nothing personal. We just don't want to fuck with you no more, G. Like, we ain't fucking with you no more. None of us is. Yeah, because me personally, I never fuck with you again after what you did to my people. Oh my God. South Africa, Britain got down on your ass too. They colonized the fuck out of you and they still get to be part of your Brics group. Ain't that what the B stand for, Britain? Who you talking about? Bitch, I'm Brazil, not Britain. Big B's. Fuck you talking about? Wrong bitch. I ain't colonized her. And besides, I ain't the one that be colonizing. I, unfortunately, was the one that was getting colonized. Girl, they got you too? Girl, yeah, them damn Portuguese got a hold of my ass and tried to turn me every which way but loose. For what? This was back in about 1500. What that was, India? About 1500? Mm-hmm. They ass was originally on their way over here to me, but then they had saw Brazil and was like, shit, we just gonna settle over here. So they, you know what I'm saying, they did they colonizing shit. They did that, you know what I'm saying, fucked up, gave her a new name, and that was that. So your real name ain't Brazil? Girl, I don't even look like no Brazil. Ain't never met a Brazil in my life. Y'all ever heard of one? I mean, when it comes to this colonizing shit, I done it all, G. I done did the colonizing and I done been colonized. It really just depends on how you look at it, y'all. Well, y'all talking all this brick stuff and basically saying, fuck me, so I feel real colonized right now. Yeah, I feel like y'all all trying to gang up and colonize me. I'm scared for my safety, for the safety of my people, for the safety of my country, because I don't know what y'all on no more. I can't trust you. I can't trust none of y'all. He do this every time, G. Every time he do this. I want to fight. Oh my God, here you go. That's your boy. That's your boy. That's your boy. He do this all the time. Now he want to go to war. Now he Mr. Tough Guy. I told y'all he was going to do this. If I can't be down with y'all, if y'all saying I can't be part of the Brics, then I want to go to war. Simple as that. Bro, ain't nobody finna keep fighting your ass. China and Russia, I want my one. Period. Well, let's fucking do it then, because I'm tired of your ass. I already let you slide when it came to Ukraine, but if you wanted it, come on. Let's just jump him, y'all. Yeah, because I just got my head done, and I ain't got time for all that fighting shit. Just send the missiles.
Oh, man. I love that one. So yeah, follow that account on TikTok. It's called @50shadesofK1. She has other videos like that too. I'm going to show another one towards the end of the stream because I just think it's just really funny. Like she's hilarious. But yes, guys, we have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to go ahead and give a quick shout out to patrons. Let's go ahead and do that because I have a lot to cover and not a lot of time to cover it. Just the reality of the situation. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you want to be a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. And I already shouted out all one. I need to move that where it's supposed to go. So sorry about that. I've been very, very busy. Today has been crazy. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'll shout out people in between here and there. But for the sake of time, let's go ahead and dive into that thumbnail to show you what we're going to discuss today, because we have some pretty interesting topics. There are some changes happening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to discuss today, Bernie Sanders defends Joe Biden. We're going to talk about one of the recent interviews that Bernie Sanders just had. And we're also going to connect something that happened last night at that White House dinner, the Correspondents dinner. And we're going to connect all that together because I have a point to make with that. We're also going to discuss Brics expansion. Why is Lula there in the middle with his tongue out? What is happening in reference to Brics? We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss JP Morgan is trying to bail out yet another bank. We're going to get into that and why this is important in reference to JP Morgan, because they have done this before, and why that bank has failed, the bank they're trying to bail out. And we're also going to discuss New Hampshire ballot initiative wins. So let's go ahead and get started with a little bit of finance. First Republic. This is one of the banks that was in trouble. So recently, I believe it was like a month ago, we talked about what happened with the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Then later on, there was issues with Signature Bank. And in between there was also another bank that was mentioned called First Republic Bank. Now, they've kind of flown under the radar when you compared them to the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. I felt like that bank received a lot more attention than First Republic Bank. But that's unfortunate because First Republic Bank right now is about to be taken over by the FDIC. I kid you not. So we should have paid attention to this. Here we go.
More breaking financial news. First Republic Bank will be seized by the FDIC. That's according to Reuters. This after deciding it's too late for any more rescue efforts by the private sector. Joining us now to break this all down here on Live Now from Fox, Editor-in-Chief of the Kobasi Letter, Adam Kobasi. He joins us now on this Friday. Adam, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. You've been following this story really all day. It's breaking right now, and it's developing quite quickly. What do you think this means at this moment going into the weekend for the San Francisco-based lender First Republic?
Yeah, I mean, we've been following this story since day one when this all began in early March. And this is very similar to what we saw with SVB, Silicon Valley Bank. They waited until the Friday and now they're seizing the bank. And over the weekend, we expect to receive a lot of news about whether or not all these deposits above the FDIC insured limit are going to be backstopped, which we believe they will. And I mean, we've been calling for a while now that all the bank deposits need to be backstopped temporarily, regardless of size, just to stop this. This is the product of human behavior, and it could have been avoided because FRC really was a great bank.
Okay.
So you notice that this bank is also located in the San Francisco area, just like Silicon Valley Bank. They're in that area, like San Francisco, Silicon Valley, like that region there. Now, so the FDIC has announced that they are going to take over First Republic Bank. Now, this is another one of those regional banks. Other people are trying to step in and see if they can actually take over that bank. But I want to bring this up because I want to remind you that when that collapse happened with Silicon Valley Bank, we were told by mainstream media that we really shouldn't panic, that this was not going to be anything like 2008, that we were not going to see a domino effect. And then shortly after Silicon Valley Bank, it was Signature Bank. And then after Signature Bank, it was First Republic Bank. So I'm kind of sitting here like, who's next, right? Who wants next? I don't know. But we can't sleep on this. You know, I get a little antsy about failing banks because it does take me back to '08. And I just want to make sure that we're continuing to cover this because this is another failed bank. Let's go on a little bit more.
So if it's going into an imminent receivership, and does that essentially mean government control? Is the government going to imminently take over First Republic's assets?
Yep, that's correct. So basically what happens is the FDIC, which is a regulator, will step in and they seize the bank. And what has to be decided now is any deposits above the $250,000 threshold, which is what all deposits are insured up to in the U.S., it has to be decided what's going to happen with those. And just like we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, we're expecting a very similar procedure here where the Fed and FDIC will back all of these deposits. But it's going to be probably, now it's going to be a question of what happens with the assets at the bank. And it's probably going to be another auction type process like we saw with Silicon Valley Bank.
But notice what he said about banking the deposits over 250K. This was the same thing with Silicon Valley Bank. Now, typically, who has deposits of like $250,000? Typically wealthy people, right? Most middle-class people don't have that. Poor people don't have that. Working class people don't have that. So anyone who has deposits under that $250,000, I don't know what happens to their deposits, but this is similar to Silicon Valley Bank, where they only seem to want to protect or are going to protect the deposits that are 250K and up. Jessica says First Republic was purchased by Merrill Lynch for $1.8 billion in September 2007. The New York-based brokerage firm ran First Republic as a separate unit, maintaining its name and management. BOA bought on January 1st. So that BOA, I think, is Bank of America. That's interesting to note as well. I'm going to play a little bit more here, and then I have another clip that I want to show you in reference to, is this a sign that we have just a First Republic bank problem, just a regional bank problem, or do we have both that and a banking crisis?
To get these assets transferred into someone else's hands because the government doesn't want to hold them indefinitely, of course.
Yeah, Adam, the banking sector, the government seemed to have put out all the stops. They went to great lengths to prevent, the run with the customers in the interim, since we saw SVB and other banks collapse there. It doesn't seem like those efforts worked. If you do business with First Republic, if you have your deposits there, what are you thinking right now on this Friday afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you have deposits under the 250,000 limit, then you're not even, there's nothing to worry about. You're insured by the FDIC. You're good to go. If you're
okay, so those people are insured by the FDIC.
Above the limit, that's where it becomes a little bit dicey. But it's again, we think all these backstops are going to be, or these deposits are going to be backstopped, especially because we had that injection of about 30 billion in deposits from a few large banks back in March. Those large banks are now, of course, above that 250,000 limit. And if the government were to let all of these loans or these deposits collapse, it would send ripple effects through the banking sector. So we are very confident that some sort of a backstop will likely come out of this.
Yep.
Okay. Now, once again, there is this concept of the government possibly trying to bail out the banks. But that may not even be necessary when it comes to this particular bank, because JP Morgan is actually interested in bailing out this bank. Listen to this, and this wouldn't be the first time. JP Morgan, PNC bidding for First Republic as part of FDIC takeover. Seizure and sale of the distressed lender could come as soon as this weekend. That's today. I think today was the deadline, if I remember correctly. Big banks, including JP Morgan Chase & Co. and PNC Financial Services Group, are vying to buy First Republic Bank in a deal that would follow a government seizure of the troubled lender. According to people familiar with the matter, a seizure of sale of First Republic by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation could come as soon as this weekend, people said. And like I said, I think today was the deadline. San Francisco-based bank has teetered for weeks following the March 10 failure of fellow Bay Area lender Silicon Valley Bank. The SVB meltdown spurred panicky First Republic customers to pull around $100 billion in deposits in a matter of days. So when this incident happened with Silicon Valley Bank, you had customers at First Republic Bank freak out and say, uh-oh, let me get my money up out of here. So let's go on. A group of the nation's biggest banks, including JP Morgan and PNC, tried to shore up First Republic with a $30 billion deposit, but it wasn't enough. First Republic considered a sale or outside capital injection and hired investment bankers to advise on its options. The Wall Street Journal has reported. It's also floated a plan to sell some of its loans or securities or both at prices above market value. A seizure and sale of First Republic would cap the astonishing collapse of a lender that was, until recently, the envy of finance. With some $233 billion in assets at the end of the first quarter, it would be the second largest bank to fail in U.S. history. This is huge. A First Republic spokesman declined to comment, of course. An FDIC spokeswoman declined to comment. So neither one of them want to talk about this. First Republic released a dismal quarterly earnings report Monday that gave new details about the extent of the damage from the deposit run. The bank said it filled the hole from fleeing depositors with expensive loans from the Federal Reserve and Federal Home Loan Bank. That left the lender facing a future where it would potentially pay more on its liabilities than it earned on its assets. The earnings report sent the bank stock down nearly 50% in one day. Yikes. It continued to tumble as the week went on and closed at 3.51 a share on Friday, down from 115 on March 8th. That's my birthday. That's my birthday. The day SVB disclosed a loss that spooked investors and customers. The banking industry turmoil began when customers with balances exceeding the $250,000 deposit insurance limit grew concerned in March about the health of a handful of mid-sized banks and pulled out their money en masse. New York-based Signature Bank failed days after SVB's collapse. Regulators and bankers hoped the panic had eased after the government stepped in to make uninsured depositors at SVB and Signature Bank whole. But First Republic's badly damaged balance sheet left it with a few good options. And we're going to go down here. JP Morgan and Pittsburgh-based PNC both have a history of stepping into the breach during crisis. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. JP Morgan, why is that there? JP Morgan bought ailing Bear Stearns in 2008, then took on Washington Mutual's incorporated operations after it was seized by the government. This goes to show you just how much money JP Morgan has, that they can just step in and buy banks that fail. And this isn't a new thing for them. We're going to go back to 1907 and talk about how JP Morgan actually became the Bank of Wall Street, or basically bought Wall Street. They've been doing this for a while. This is not a new thing, but that goes to tell you how much money JP Morgan has. Now, this piece here, Chief Executive Jamie Dimon, who's featured on the thumbnail, paralyzed his crisis management into a statesman role among bank executives. He is the longest serving CEO of the biggest U.S. banks in the role since 2005 and regularly uses his perch to advise government officials and promote policy moves he says will help the economy. He was a key force behind the $30 billion big bank deposit that kept First Republic afloat in the early days of the banking panic. He later tried to rally his fellow CEOs to craft a new rescue plan for the troubled bank, suggesting that they could convert some or all of their deposits into a capital infusion. During the 2008 financial crisis, yes, I'm sorry to take you back there, but we got to do it. During the 2008 financial crisis, PNC bought ailing Cleveland lender National City Corp with government assistance. That deal made PNC one of the largest regional banks in the U.S. It was the nation's 6th largest bank at the end of last year. Okay. There is something that could have prevented a lot of this, and that is having a public bank. Because you see, during the 2008 crisis, there is one state that did not struggle the way that other states did in this country, and that is North Dakota. North Dakota didn't struggle because North Dakota has a public bank. It's called the Bank of North Dakota. This has existed since like the 1800s, so it's not a new thing. If more of these cities like San Francisco and the Silicon Valley area, all the cities in this country actually, if people actually invested more in establishing public banks, we could avoid some of this mess. And that's the reason why I brought people on to talk about public banking. There was a gentleman that came on that's in Philadelphia. He's with an organization there. They're trying to start a public bank in Philadelphia. Now, it's not as easy to do it for the state nowadays, but you can do it probably easier by the city. So those of you who are here with me in Boston, if we wanted to, we could try to find a way to get a public bank in Boston. Doesn't have to be the public bank for the whole state, but that is one way to prevent this from happening. Now, but the question is this: is this just a First Republic problem? Is it just a Silicon Valley Bank problem? Is this just a Signature Bank problem? Or is this the sign of a banking crisis once again? Listen to this.
Good morning. Happy
Do
to be
we
here.
have a First Republic problem or a banking problem?
Well, I think we have both, and I think it's somewhat naive to say that this is just limited to First Republic. If you step back and think about it, this should never have happened. This went after the most heavily regulated, capitalized industry on the planet, banking. And the regional banking system, I think, is quite vital to the U.S. So I think it is a crisis. I think the regional banks are heavily dependent on the FDIC. They're heavily dependent on the Federal Home Loan Bank to get additional cash. We don't know how they're going to operate when those two programs expire.
Is it a crisis that is ring-fenced, so to speak, or is it a crisis that bleeds out to the broader economy and leads to a credit crunch?
Does this crisis bleed out to the broader economy? And I want to point out something that he mentioned earlier on. Remember when that collapse happened of too many banks collapsing, of Silicon Valley Bank? Remember they said that this was not going to be a domino effect. And what did I tell you guys? I was like, I don't know about that. I'll wait to see. And then after that, it was Signature Bank. And then we have First Republic Bank. So sometimes you just have to wait and see if these things are going to happen instead of, I think what they tried to do was calm the nerves of the American people so that people would not become afraid and fearful like people were in 2008. But you have to be honest with the people.
It's ring-fenced as long as there's continuous progress to some sort of resolution. And I actually don't think the savings and loan industry back in the late 80s, early 90s is the wrong thing to look at. Some sort of consolidation, some sort of agencies, a technical assistance committee at the FDIC or the Fed to help these regional banks when they see a surge in depositor inflows or outflows, or when they see an asset liability problem. Those are the kinds of things that you need. But I think what we've actually seen is that the deposit outflows just didn't occur because they occurred. They occurred because businesses and households are burning cash in a big way. And it's the higher price of everything, and it's the higher cost to finance everything. So if you're in the couple lower quintiles of earners in the US, we're already seeing in the Chase data that you're depleting your deposit balances because of the higher cost of groceries just to live. And businesses, as they're rolling over their floating rate funding, it's double or triple what they put it on.
Okay, this is the third point that hasn't been discussed.
Did everybody catch what he said there? How he tried to put the blame on us? Listen to this piece right here. This is why I wanted to play this clip. He was okay in the beginning, and then he lost me right about here.
Or outflows, or when they see an asset liability problem. Those are the kinds of things that you need. But I think what we've actually seen is that the deposit outflows just didn't occur because they occurred. They occurred because businesses and households are burning cash in a big way. And
businesses and households are burning cash in a big way. It's our fault, guys. We're burning cash. It's always our fault. Really? That's interesting. I think people who are working class and people who are poor and people who are lower middle class, I don't think they're burning through cash right now. I think they're trying to hold on to as much as they have because the prices are high. He goes on to mention the prices are high.
it's the higher price of everything, and it's the higher cost to finance everything. So if you're in the couple...
Okay, so he admits that the prices are high. So if the prices are high, I don't think people are going out there spending more. I think, for example, if you go to the grocery store, you know the grocery store prices are still high, right? How many of you are still buying as many groceries as you were 2 years ago? How many? I'm not. I'm buying a little at a time, actually. Little at a time. How many of you? And this is the case for a lot of people that are spoken to. They're not buying as many groceries as they were 2 years ago. They're buying less because the prices are high. But the way he explains it, he makes it sound like it's our fault because we're just going out, just blowing our money. We're spending like crazy. It always comes back to us instead of blaming the real issue.
Lower quintiles of earners in the U.S., we're already seeing in the Chase data that you're depleting your deposit balances because of the higher cost of groceries just to live. And businesses, as they're rolling over their floating rate funding, it's double or triple what they put it on.
Okay, this is the third point that hasn't been discussed enough. Point one is worries about return of capital. You take it out of a beleaguered financial institution, park it somewhere else. Point two is about return on capital. You take it out of a bank, give it to a money market fund. You're on to point three. You're saying that there's that much pain out there right now that we're just burning through money in the United States.
Of course we are. When you look at, you could look at our own Chase data, you could look at the Federal Reserve Board data, you see that the bottom quintile of earners have been most punished by the high price of everything. So that excess savings that they accumulated during the CARES Act, they've blown right through it. Their deposit balances are below where they went into COVID. Now,
what excess savings? He's talking about, he said people who are at the very bottom, and he's like, well, they burn through that excess savings. What savings? See, I think this is where people, this guy's very smart. Okay. That's why they bring him on. Okay. But I don't think he understands that when he talks about the extra money that people received during the pandemic, in his mind, he actually believes that money went into a savings account for poor people. He said the people at the bottom. He doesn't understand that for a lot of people in that particular situation, that money went to bills. That money went to catch people up on rent because some people were behind on rent. That money went to turn people's lights back on. He honestly thinks that money went into a savings account. This is the class divide. Say it again, Simone. Simone goes, how long is 1,400 going to last? Right. Like, this is not even for me, like, when I got the stimulus check, I was just like, okay. Now, luckily, I wasn't laid off, But for people that I know that were laid off or they lost their business, their small businesses, that money went to bills. That money didn't go into a savings account. So it just, I get it. You have to bring on someone who's a finance expert. I get that. But now he's trying to basically gaslight the audience and make them believe that the American people who are lower class received so much money from the federal government during the pandemic that they were actually able to put it into savings. No. No. That's a class issue. That's a class divide. Now, I told you that JP Morgan wants to step in. They want to be the ones to save the day. And I told you this is not the first time that they've done this. We want to go back to the panic of 1907. And I want to explain to you how JP Morgan took over Wall Street, because it wasn't always that way. And then I'm going to tell you my issue with JP Morgan. So let's go ahead and dive into this. The consolidation of financial power is almost always a harbinger for the rise or fall of the New York's future. And no event was more exemplary of this effect than the little-known panic of 1907. And no man amassed so much power from it than JP Morgan. Now, this is the individual JP Morgan. Okay? So it was one man that had that much power. Commonly known story of the panic of 1907 is that in October 1907, an attempt by F. Augustus Hines, an overzealous Wall Street banker, to corner the copper market led to a run on many major banks. The effects of the run caused a panic that reverberated throughout Wall Street, New York City banks, and ultimately many of the U.S. banking and manufacturing industries. At the height of the panic, JP Morgan stepped in to aid the banking community and quell the massive drop in bank reserves and market collapse. He was touted by many Americans as a true patriot and selfless beacon of financial hope for the country. But to those who rigidly examine his actions, he was a monster who fed off of the demise of economic destruction. Yes, because let me tell you what he did. He volunteered to come in and help those banks. But in doing so, he took over those banks. It wasn't like he wasn't really trying to help them. He was trying to gain that more power for himself. And this is how JP Morgan became to be like this big conglomerate it is today. This is how this started. So I want to show you this piece here. Let me go down to this part because I want to tell you a little bit more detail what he did. With increasing shares in decreasing markets, industrial monopolization, over-leveraged capital, debt, and other dark conditions, the panic of 1907 began long before F. Augustus Hines' October run on copper. And as the ice began to crack under Wall Street, JP Morgan was under it waiting to attack. According to JP Morgan and Co.'s records, the panic of 1907, which drew out over the last 3 weeks in October of that year, proceeded as follows. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but I'll put the link in the chat for you to read. But I want to get to what happened at the end. Let me go down here. Sorry. Boop. I'm just making sure I got to the right part. I don't want to skip. Okay, here we go. As the panic got underway, Morgan formed a committee to determine which institutions could be saved after the panic and which ones could be sacrificed. You see how this works? He had no intentions to actually save all of them. The committee answered to three men, JP Morgan, George F. Baker, and James Stillman. At the end of countless hours of examination and committee recommendations, 3 banks were left off the list to save: Hamilton Bank, the 12th Ward Bank, and the Empire City Savings Bank. All 3 banks were in Harlem. Imagine that. Let's go on. As Harlem was hit hard by the lack of attempts to aid the area, Brooklyn was hit even harder by the failure to carry out the intended aid. First National Bank of Brooklyn, Williamsburg Trust Company of Brooklyn, Borough Bank of Brooklyn, and the Jenkins Trust Company of Brooklyn all failed. This is the piece you need to note about here. Then the takeovers immediately began. Morgan swooped in and absorbed Mercantile Trust and 6 more trust companies and banks, including the 2 largest banks that were hit the hardest, the Trust Company of America and Lincoln Trust. Morgan's Guarantee Trust and Manhattan Trust Companies would control them with the Rothschild family. U.S. Embassy, August Belmont at the helm of the merger. He promised Charles Barney that he would help to save the Knickerbocker Trust, but decided to pull the plug at the last minute. Soon after that, Barney committed suicide. Banks in other cities began to fail. Banks in Providence, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh sought aid. J.P. Morgan's approximated private pool of about $30 million included a $10 million loan from John D. Rockefeller. Publicly, Morgan railed the working people of America for trying to rescue their own money from the teeth of Wall Street greed. So this is history for JP Morgan. This is what they've done. While JP Morgan was ordering the public to keep cool heads, and he and his Wall Street cohort were charging massive interest rates on their bailout loans, it was payback time. Morgan called the collateral on the loans he gave to his old advisory, C.W. Morse. He used the collateralized bonds. He used the collateralized bonds to acquire Morse's Consolidated Steamship Company, which was his competitor in the sector as well, as Morgan owned the International Mercantile Marine Company, the parent company of the famous Titanic White Star Lines. So as you can see, like, this is a long article, but long story short, they've done this before. And that's how JP Morgan became as big as it is now. That was the start of it. Now, here's my problem. As many times as you're hearing about people talk about JP Morgan and this banking crisis, just like we just went through here, they are very silent about the fact that JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, that they have been subpoenaed in reference to their business dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. And to talk about this, like, to seriously, just to bring them up at this point in time and to talk about this and just say, oh, well, Jamie Dimon, Google Jamie Dimon right now. Google Jamie Dimon and you'll see nothing but just great things. Oh, Jamie Dimon is coming to try to help a bank. This is so great for him to do. Da, 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 da. And none of these media outlets are talking about the fact that he's been subpoenaed in reference to finance dealings with Jeffrey Epstein, because Jeffrey Epstein had JP Morgan as his bank and used that bank to fund all of that mess that was happening at his private island in the Virgin Islands. And they're not even mentioning it. They're talking about Jamie Dimon right now like he's a saint. And it's disgusting. There's more about Epstein that's coming. I was going to try to talk about it today, but I don't think I'm going to have time. But there's more information that has just been released about Jeffrey Epstein, and somebody that a lot of you like too. And I don't know how to tell you, because some of you are not going to be happy when you hear about it. If you're not on Twitter, you probably have not heard about it. Some of you are going to be very upset, very upset. But That's why you can't have this hero worship. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Sab Earl Steelen, chair of Rocky Mount Public Banking Institution, wrote white paper on why FDIC not needed for a public bank. The requirements of FDIC membership and 100% collateral for uninsured public deposits were established solely with private banks in mind. The FDIC completely is unnecessary for public banks that follow the Bank of North Dakota model and would substantially undermine their probability. I think that's what you mean. There's a question mark there. And effectiveness. CB 14, public banks. Yes, indeed. Eric says, better put all your money in Second Republic Bank. I don't know. I don't know. Lawrence says, Wall Street is a giant legalized casino. That's a good way to refer to it. And thank you for the super chat, Mary. Hey, chat room from Wisconsin. All right. Land of cheese. All right. We're going to go into our second story here about Brics. And we've been talking about it before on the show, but there's new news about this every week, it seems. Because now, believe it or not, there are other countries that want to join Brics. 19 of them. We tried to warn you that this was going to spread. Here we go.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. These 5 countries are together called Brics. It's a grouping, and this group may soon disrupt the global power structure.
I'm just going to pause here to explain to you who everybody represents. So over here on the left, this is the president of South Africa. There's Putin for Russia. Here's I forget his name. I know I suck. I forget his name. But anyway, this is the leader representing India. And then this is Xi Jinping, who represents China. And then, of course, Lula, who represents Brazil. And they make up Brics.
It's expanding. As many as 19 countries want to join the Brics. And this is very significant. In a divided world, this group may emerge as a force to reckon with. You may think, how does yet another group help? And why should you care? Well, tonight we'll discuss why. In about 2 months from now, the BRICS summit will be held. South Africa is the host, and one of the agenda items is the expansion of BRICS. Like I said, 19 countries want to join. A South African diplomat has shared the details. Let me quote from what he said. What will be discussed is the expansion of BRICS and the modalities of how this will happen. 13 countries have formally asked to join, and another 6 have asked informally. We're getting applications to join every day. Which countries are these? We don't have the full list, but we do know of 2 countries that have formally asked to join. These are Saudi Arabia and Iran. And among those interested...
Woo! Let's go back. I have more countries on another list. I'll tell you in just a second.
Countries that have formally asked to join. These are Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Pause. Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, this is a country that does business dealings with the United States. Saudi Arabia and the United States have business dealings over oil, right? They're usually pretty tight. But Saudi Arabia, in my opinion, this is a way of letting America know, the US government know, yeah, we don't really belong to you like that. I know we had some business dealings in the past and everything, but we can move however we want to move. This is a slap in the face to the US government in the way to speak. Like, this is Saudi Arabia giving the US government the hand. Okay? Seriously. Joe Biden has yet to respond to this, by the way. They've already had meetings with Xi Jinping trying to bring about some type of peace between Russia and Ukraine. They've already had these meetings. And Joe Biden say nothing. Joe Biden, no, nothing at all. So Saudi Arabia, that is huge if they were to join BRICS. The other country here, Iran. So it's just, could you imagine how just think about this for a second. Imagine if those two also joined BRICS. Can you imagine how powerful BRICS would be? The world is starting to change. Things are changing around us. The US government, remember the video we talked about a couple weeks ago with Richard Wolff, that the empire is starting to fall? This is another sign. The US government, there may come a time, maybe even in our lifetime, where the US government is not the head of the world, where the US government is not the police of the world, where the US government economically may not even be on top. This is a wake-up call. These countries are looking to create this type of multipolar coalition. They're not looking for a head, someone to be on top and tell them what to do and to guide them. They're not looking for that. They're looking for a collaboration. They're forming a team. They're trying to become the Avengers. And I'm here to tell you right now, if Saudi Arabia and Iran joins BRICS, that is going to be something, okay? So let's look out for that.
And among those interested are Argentina, the UAE, Algeria, Egypt, Bahrain, and Indonesia. They all...
Pause here, and then I'll go back to let her speak. So Argentina, the UAE, Algeria, Egypt, Bahrain, and Indonesia. So that's 6 plus the other 2, that's 8. But remember, I told you there are 19 countries that want to join.
Want to join BRICS. The question is why. These countries already...
Go back a little bit because I cut her off.
And among those interested are Argentina, the UAE, Algeria, Egypt, Bahrain, and Indonesia. They all want to join BRICS. The question is why. These countries already have multiple platforms to engage. They have bilateral engagements where leaders have one-on-one meetings. They have multilateral engagements like the G20 or Group of 20 top economies, or the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and of course the United Nations. So multiple avenues to engage. Then why bother with the BRICS? Because our world is changing. Globalization as we know it is ending. The pandemic disrupted it, and the Ukraine war accelerated its end. It has left our world divided into 2 blocks, one led by the US and its Western allies, and the other led by China and Russia.
Yep.
Where does it leave countries that don't want to join either camp? Countries that still want to enjoy the perks of globalization without picking sides. And there are more such countries than you would imagine. They don't want to pay the price for a great power game. Look at this map. How many countries are in the Western camp? 52. They criticize Russia. They have sanctioned Moscow for the war in Ukraine. What about the other side, the Russia-China-led camp? It has 12 members, just 12. What about the rest? There are some 127 states that fall in neither camp.
This point right here is so important. And I wish I could increase this and make this larger for you to see. What we're talking about here is power in the hands of few. When we talk about the West, let's pull this back up. You have the United States, you have Canada, you have parts of Europe as well. When we talk about the alliance here with Russia, you have Iran, right? But look at all of the countries that are gray. Where do those people go? This is very important. If you look at all the countries that are gray, there's actually more of them than there are a part of that pro-West or the pro-Russia side. So imagine if all those gray countries got together and formed their own coalition. I think this is something that people really need to see, right? Because sometimes, especially those of us that live on the West, we're like, yeah, rah, rah, USA, USA is the best, yada, 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 and all that kind of thing. And then it could be the same way on the other side, where maybe Russia and China may say, yeah, we're the best, yada, yada, and all that kind of stuff. And then you have this whole large gray area in between where those people just actually don't fit on either side. And then you start to realize that you're not as big as you thought that you were. So you take a look at this, and this should be eye-opening to people. These are all the people that are forgotten about in a sense. They are called non-aligned. Let's go back a little bit here because I cut her off.
It has 12 members, just 12. What about the rest? There are some 127 states that fall in neither camp, 127 countries who have neither supported Russia nor criticized the NATO. They did not join the sanctions against Russia. These non-aligned nations are the majority. And they have a clear agenda now. They're being both pragmatic and opportunistic, and they want a forum to present their case.
And let's remember Africa. Remember, they were really pushing Africa to take a side in reference to this conflict with Russia and Ukraine. And Africa said, yeah, we're staying out of this. This is all on you guys. We're not taking your side. We're not taking your side. We're just going to remain neutral. Think about all the countries in Africa. So the countries that were gray, those are actually the majority. We're not as big as we think that we are, at least those of us here in North America.
BRICS could be that forum, although it does have Russia and China as members, but they've so far not been allowed to hijack the agenda. This forum has advocated for globalization to be kept intact, and it has several compelling proposals in the pipeline. There is talk of a BRICS currency. It may not happen immediately, but it's an interesting proposal. It's a proposal to bypass the US dollar in international trade. BRICS members are also building new trade routes. One of them is the International North-South Transportation Corridor. It could speed up movement of cargo from Russia to countries like India.
New trade routes so that they don't have to deal with the United States trade route, any of that stuff. They can just bypass the US. We talked about the currency. We talked about yuan, how it has surpassed the US dollar on a global level. The world that we know is changing. And for some of us may sit back and say, oh, we kind of figured this would happen one day. But for some people, maybe more so like my parents, like generation, they're looking back and they're like, holy crap. The days of the US being the top empire, those days are changing.
And proposals like these are attracting the non-aligned states. They want mechanisms that are largely insulated from the great power rivalry. BRICS provides them an option. This may have given the group a new purpose, saving globalization.
People need a wake-up call. America needs a wake-up call. Now, that being said, there are a couple people that have talked about this before in reference to this multi-polar coalition here. Danny Haifong talks about this. Ben Norton talks about this. Nick, my comrade from RBN, talks about this. If you're more curious about this whole idea of this multi-polar coalition, definitely check them out because they focus on this quite a bit. But I saw this clip here as well of Jeffrey Sachs on Democracy Now! And he's talking about this as well. And it's called Jeffrey Sachs on China's historic push for multipolar world to end U.S. domination. It's getting real out there, you guys.
As China is making headlines across the globe, though maybe not so much in the United States, for its diplomatic efforts. In late February, China released a 12-point peace plan to end the war in Ukraine. On March 10th, Iran and Saudi Arabia announced they would restore ties as part of an agreement brokered by China. Days later, in mid-March, Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva to talk about Ukraine, trade, and moving away from the U.S. dollar. Xi Jinping then met with French President Emmanuel Macron in Beijing. During Macron's visit, Xi spoke about the roles of China and France in world affairs.
The world today is undergoing profound historic changes. As permanent members of the UN Security Council and major countries with a tradition of independence, China and France, as promoters of the multipolarization of the world and the democratization of international relations, have the ability and responsibility to transcend difference and restraints. Adhere to the comprehensive strategic cooperative partnerships between China and France with stability, reciprocity, development, and progress. Practice true multilateralism and maintain world peace, stability, and prosperity.
While in Beijing, the French President Emmanuel Macron suggested France and European nations should not become a vassal of the United States when it comes to Taiwan.
France supports the single China policy and the search for a peaceful solution to the situation. For that matter, it's Europe's position. It's a position that has always been compatible with the role of an ally. But it's precisely why I'm stressing the importance of strategic autonomy. Ally doesn't mean being a vassal. It's not because we do things together that we can't think alone, that we're going to follow the people that are the toughest in a country that's allied with us. When we look at the facts, France has lessons to be received from no one, be either in Ukraine, in Sahel, or in Taiwan.
China's continued its diplomatic outreach by offering last week to hold talks between Israel and Palestine.
Did you guys just hear that? China is even willing now to hold talks between Israel and Palestine. And where is the U.S. government in all of these conversations? Where was the U.S. government when China sat down with other countries to talk about a 12-point peace plan between Russia and Ukraine? We were nowhere to be found because we didn't really want a peace plan, right? Isn't that what was revealed, or one of the things that was revealed in those Pentagon documents that were leaked, is that there was no plan to try to end this war anytime soon? And that the goal of the war was actually to implement regime change in Russia? Isn't that one of the things that was revealed in those documents? So you have other leaders of other countries saying, forget the United States, let's all collaborate together and figure out what we can get done for us, and not let the United States government constantly remain the leader of the world. And that is what is happening. Now, Jeffrey Sachs comes in here. Let me bring him in because I want you to hear what he has to say.
Watershed that the world is living through right now. What China is after, if we view it from China's perspective, is what was also said, true multilateralism. And what that means, or true multipolarity, another term that they use. And that means they don't want a US-led world. They want a multipolar world.
Ding, 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 ding. That part right there. They don't want a US-led world. They want a multipolar world. Kind of sounds like a co-op, right? That kind of sounds like a worker co-op. Nobody's in charge over here. We're all working together to get things done. They don't want a boss.
And the basis of that is that the United States is 4.1% of the world population. China is 17.5% of the world population. China's economy is comparable to the U.S. economy, and indeed China is the lead trade partner for much of the world. So China is saying, we're there too, alongside you. We want a multipolar world. We don't want a U.S.-led world. And while the United States sometimes talks about a rule-based order, the fact of the matter is that the U.S. grand strategy, if we can use that term of the grand strategists of the U.S. State, see our grand strategy in the United States as being dominance. And I often refer to an article that I think is very clear, succinct, and revealing by a former colleague of mine at Harvard University, Robert Blackwell, an esteemed ambassador of the United States, who wrote in 2015, and I'll quote from the article, "Since its founding, the United States has consistently pursued a grand strategy focused on acquiring and maintaining preeminent power over various rivals, first on the North American continent, then in the Western Hemisphere, and finally globally."
And eventually to the point where the United States government became the world's police. That's why there's 800 military bases, U.S. military bases across the world. That's why. And it doesn't even really necessarily have to be a rival. He mentioned rival, but it doesn't really necessarily have to be that either. It is just the fact of world dominance. It's just the fact of the U.S. government wanting to extract resources from other countries. Doesn't mean that country actually did something to the United States. They just want the resources, right? We were in Afghanistan, partly because they had a resource that we wanted. That was opium. The 1/3 part that the U.S. government occupies of Syria, that just happens to be where the oil is located. It's things like that, you know? It's just things like that. So these countries, and I'll be interested to see where countries like Haiti would fit in all of this. There were talks of Mexico possibly joining BRICS at one point. I don't know if that's still, a plan. But it will be interesting to see some of these other countries that have been devastated by the U.S. government, if they would be a part of this as well. You can't really be upset. I will say this. You can't really be upset because it's like we've taken so much. We've taken so much from these people. And I don't mean like you and me personally, but our government has. They've destroyed countries. They've removed leaders of other countries. Imagine if someone came to the U.S. and just removed our leader and said, okay, you're not going to be president. Actually, you guys probably be happy about that right now. But you guys are not going to be president anymore. We're going to put somebody else in. Imagine if that happened here. If someone else just came in and said that. So, I mean, you really can't be mad at them. I see people like, how dare China and them do this? How dare they? Would you trust the U.S. government? Would you, if you lived abroad in one of those other countries, would you trust the U.S. government right now? Would you trust that they wouldn't intervene in your country? Would you trust that they wouldn't try to steal your resources? Would you trust that they wouldn't try to overtake your leaders and knock your leaders out and put someone else on a pedestal? Would you trust the U.S. government at this point in time, knowing everything that's happened historically? Because I would not.
Well, China doesn't want the United States to be the preeminent power. It wants to live alongside the United States. Blackwell, writing in 2015, said China's rise is a threat to U.S. preeminence. And he laid out a series of steps that the Biden administration actually is following almost step by step. What Blackwell laid out already back in 2015 is that the United States should create, quote, new preferential trading arrangements among U.S. friends and allies to increase their mutual gains through instruments that consciously exclude China. There should be a technology control regime to block China's strategic capabilities, a buildup of, quote, power political capacities of U.S. friends and allies on China's periphery, and strengthen U.S. military forces along the Asian rimland despite any Chinese opposition. This has become the Biden foreign policy. China knows it. China really is pushing back. But what's very important and interesting to understand, and we've seen it clearly in the dynamics involving the Ukraine war, most of the world also does not want the U.S. as the global preeminent power. Most of the world wants a multipolar world.
Most of the world wants a multipolar world. Our government, however, wants to be the head. It's like Voltron. There's a cartoon I used to watch when I was a kid. There's this cartoon called Voltron. And like, there's these little men, and they like come together and they form this giant transformer called Voltron, right? Don't call them Transformers though, because Voltron fans get mad. But anyway, there was like a head and someone formed. He's like, I'll form the arm. I'll form the leg, and I'll form the head. Voltron. So the U.S. government just wants to be the head. That's it. The U.S. government just wants to be on top and wants to be in control and wants to be in charge. They don't really want to work with other people. And this is also why, like, even some of our allies are starting to have criticism. This is why even President Macron, who can't control his own country right now, there's crazy shit going on in France right now. But honestly, like President Macron, he took, this pension reform from people. We've talked about this multiple times on the show. I don't want to get too in the weeds with it. But even he made the statement that I do not want to go along with the U.S. lead and be opposed to China. I still want to have the relationship that I have with China. And actually, guys, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe us European countries, maybe we should try to be a third world power and not really just rely on the lead from the United States. It's the U.S. It's the U.S. that wants to be the head. And they'll always make it seem like it's always the other country that is the enemy. And we never do anything wrong. We're the ones in the right. We're just trying to save everybody. We're trying to save all the women and the children that we've killed, that we've starved to death because of sanctions. You have to start asking yourself these questions. That's right. JB says Voltron is a worker co-op. Hell yeah. Voltron. I love it. I love that show.
And is therefore not lined up behind the United States sanctions on Russia and so forth. And this was also the message of President Lula visiting China, saying to President Xi Jinping, we as Brazil also want multipolarity, true multipolarity, and we want peace, for example, in the Russian-Ukraine war that is based on not a U.S. perception of dominance, say NATO enlargement, but rather a peace that reflects a multipolar world. This is real. It's happening all over the world. And the fact of the matter is, the reason why this is a historic watershed is that the underlying economics and technological change have made it so. The U.S. is no longer the dominant world economy, and the G7, which is the US, Canada, Britain, France, Italy, Germany, and Japan, is actually smaller than the Brics countries in economic size, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So we really are, in fact, in a multipolar world, but in ideology, we're in a conflict.
Boom. There you go. This is what I was saying. Like, things are starting to change. If you haven't had a chance to do so, I have a video where Richard Wolff is on the thumbnail, and it's called The U.S. Empire is Falling or something like that, right? It should be on my homepage. That video has over 60,000 views now, which is crazy. That happened recently. So apparently a lot of people want to hear about why the U.S. is struggling, because that video really took off. If you haven't had a chance to see that, you'll definitely want to check that out. Now, that being said, I do want to offer a little bit of humor here, because I told you I was going to bring this back up again, but this is a different one, because I want you to look at it from a different perspective as well when we talk about like Brics. And this account, again, on TikTok, I told you, like, she's really great. It's called, let me just pause this here. It's called 50 Shades of K. So she did another one. We got to add some humor to this because this is funny. It says, point of view, if the countries had a meeting, part 2. So this involves Brics as well. Check this out.
Gee, this motherfucker hip. Boy, I tell you, I'm finna spaz. On Jackie Chan, I'm finna spaz. China, what's wrong? He mad because America just went on vacation. He still ain't paid him his money back. Yeah, I just had a meeting about that on Wednesday. I told them I'm not giving them no more goddamn stimulus checks. Yeah, I'm gonna call you back though. What up, y'all? What we talking about today? What up, Russia? America, is you out here blowing money you still ain't paid China back? Oh my God. Every time I turn around, y'all all down my back about some goddamn money. Ain't ask me how I'm doing or nothing. How they Ian doing? Yuan. Yuan is y'all currency, not yen. That's Japan them. Man, who keep inviting the continent hoe? I thought we already established her big ass ain't fit to be here. America, shut the fuck up. All you hoes is my sons, honestly. But for your information, Nigeria is sick, so I'm covering for her today, okay? And I'm a continent. I don't need your permission to be here. Ain't you a continent too? Oh no, see, there's North America, and then there's South America. Yeah, I know South America. Me and her used to kick back in the day. But which one is you? United States, bitch. And for your info, I could have been a continent, but I turned it down because I didn't want to. It's too much work. I'd rather be a country. Either way, I'ma conquer some shit. As if this shit couldn't get any goddamn worse. Mexico, what are you doing here? He a country, ain't he? He can be here. He a little late, but he could be here. I'm late because I've been working all day. Y'all don't know nothing about that. Y'all don't work. None of y'all know what hard work is. Me and my people, we work for what we want. If we don't got it, we gonna build it. Yeah, y'all work y'all ass over here and take all the construction worker jobs is what you do. And poof, now we deserve them. Your country wouldn't be shit without my people. He ain't lying. You wouldn't be shit without my people either. You would be fucked. Look, I understand y'all want to get off on a rant about racism, but we need to focus on the issue at hand. The motherfucking money. All right, China act like a goddamn Capricorn. What's up with the money? I'ma pay him back. I had gave some of it to Ukraine though, so I'm just really waiting on them. They said they gonna pay me back though, so I'm just waiting on them to pay me back, and then I'm paying.
Oh, that is the golden moment. That's the golden part.
You back. You gave Ukraine my motherfucking money, and I don't know what for. The fuck is you jumping in my beef for? I'm beefing with Ukraine like I always do, and then here come America want to play Captain Save-A-Hole and go get him some money. Ain't even got no money to give. You wrong as fuck for that, G. I would have never did no shit like this. You wrong. I don't even know how you sleep at night. Russia, is you trying to gaslight him for trying to help them? Gaslight. Of course I'm a gaslighter. I'm 1/4 European. It run in my blood. Hey, y'all. China ain't that? Taiwan. God damn it, baby, what is you doing here? I done already told you you ain't no goddamn country. Yes, I am. They said it.
Who said it?
I did. I got my own military. It don't work like that, Taiwan. Your ass is the Republic of China. China, that's me. The Republic of me. So no matter how independent you think you want to be, your ass still belongs to me. And bitch, we can fight about that. We can get it cracking. I'll put your ass in the head like real quick, slap your ass. No, I'm not no damn Republic of shit no more. I'm my own country. I'm my own woman, China. I don't want to be with you no more. You don't treat me right. Like, I need to be on my own. I need to be my own. I need to be on my own for a little while. Look, Taiwan, I know this is a difficult time for you, you know, going through all your trials and tribulations that you going through, you know, with the separation and all that. So I just wanted to let you know that if it's anything you need, I'm here for you if you want to talk or something like that. You need somebody. Thank you.
A little bit of humor for you there. Again, that channel on TikTok is called 50 Shades of K1. There's a 1 at the end. Definitely check that out. I had to end with a little bit of humor there for you. I'm sorry. It's funny. She's cracking me up. Okie doke. We're going to go ahead to our next story here. Let me shout out some comments first, and then we'll get into the Bernie story. Oh boy, she's a trip. Thank you for the super chat, Beth. Saudi Arabia isn't giving the U.S. the hand, just one finger. There you go. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Brics is forming a co-op Sabby with no head at the top. Exactly. That's what it is. Thank you for the super chat, Mary. Remember, those countries are third world nations, and they finally seek to grow out of the pit the U.S. left them in. They're tired of the U.S. sanctions. There you go. Brian said the Duran breaks it down. Cyrus Jansen. That's right. That's another one I forgot. The Duran talks about the multipolar world. Mastermind, the Brics Globetrotters are coming to play the Wall Street Generals. That's a cute name. You guys got jokes. JB, I talked about this with Carl Za. I released the clip about a multipolar world this morning. Yes, check that out, you guys, on JB's channel, because he interviewed Carl Za. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. Really good interview. And it seems like JB has the clips now, so you can see some of the clips too. Thank you for the super chat, Meteor Dreams. Imagine if all marginalized communities within the U.S. got together and did what Brics is doing. We would all be a better country. But we can't because greed. And thank you for the super sticker, Justin. Thank you. Just don't. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me out with the algorithm, guys. Thank you so much. Okie doke. Bernie Sanders is out here defending Joe Biden. He had an interview recently with Chris Wallace. Now, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I think Chris Wallace actually did a good job with the questions that he asked him. I don't agree with everything that Chris Wallace said, but I want you to hear some of these responses from Bernie Sanders, and then we're going to connect this to the issue of Joe Biden running again in 2024 and some missed opportunities alongside something that happened last night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that I think should give you pause. And I think we all need to be paying attention to. So let's get into this discussion here with Chris Wallace and Bernie Sanders.
President Biden announced this week that he's running for re-election, and you have already endorsed him. Why is it that not a single leading Democrat is willing to contest that nomination in the primaries? Why do you think that is?
I suspect it has to do with a real fear of the growth of right-wing extremism in this country.
So the question that he's asking Bernie Sanders is basically, long story short, why is it that none of the other Democrats that are there in office are disagreeing with this run, this re-election run of Joe Biden for 2024? Bernie Sanders' response is, well, it's because of the fear of the right-wing extremism. I don't believe that to be true. I do not believe that to be true. But let me let him finish.
And that is the Republican Party over the last number of years, accelerated by Trumpism, has become not a conservative party, but a right-wing extremist party. And this is a party that, not all by any means, but you have many of the leaders who actually don't believe in democracy anymore. You have many Republicans maintaining the lie that Trump actually won the election. You have Republicans working overtime to deny low-income people, people of color, young people, the right to vote, people who defended the insurrection in January 6th. So the first answer to your question, Chris, is that I think there's a great fear in this country about attacks on democracy. We want to maintain
So
democracy.
you're saying it's more?
So let's talk about this for just a second. Great fear about attacks on democracy. But when they say democracy, what type of democracy are they referring to? So, for example, I told you we don't have real democracy. If we did, third party and independent candidates would easily get on the ballot. They wouldn't have to go through these hurdles to try to fight just to get on the ballot, right? If we had real democracy, RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson would be able to debate Joe Biden, which right now we have a DNC that says that's not even going to happen. We don't have real democracy. What we have are corporations who pick who they think should be the person. They bankroll that candidate, and that is usually the candidate that gets pushed through, the candidate that has the most money. So that's what you need to pay attention to. Who do the donors get behind? Who has the most money? That's usually the one that'll make their way through, in reference to the Democratic Party. Now, Bernie Sanders is saying he believes they're not speaking up or contesting this re-election run by Joe Biden because they're afraid that we may end up with a Trump again, a Trump-like figure again. I don't believe that. I believe the reason why those politicians in DC and the Democratic Party are not contesting Joe Biden's presidential run for 2024 is because they want to make sure that they keep their seat. Because they know that if they try to push back against this, especially at this particular time, and we all know Joe Biden is not doing well. We all know this. They know that they could end up like Dennis Kucinich, where the Democratic Party could come in and they could redraw their district so that they don't have a district, just like they did to Dennis. They're afraid that would happen, that they would get pushed out, that they would get primary challenged. Their own party would put up a candidate to run against them to push them out. That's why they've already been told, if you want to stay here, you got to play the game. And right now, the game says we all got to get behind Joe Biden. And that's why even when it comes to the regressives, I told you we don't call them progressives anymore. Even when it comes to the regressives, that's why they're not willing to say, nope, sorry, There are people running on progressive issues against Joe Biden, so I'm going to endorse them. That's why they're not willing to do it. So Bernie's not going to tell you that because Bernie want to keep his seat too.
More fear of Donald Trump and MAGA than it is enthusiasm for Joe Biden?
Well, I think that's half of it. But the other half is a recognition, I think, that, while Biden has not done everything I would like to have seen him done. Let's talk about what he has accomplished, which is no small thing. We forget as Americans, we have short memory spans.
Now it's our fault. See, now we don't remember. These are the kind of things I like to point out. Look at what Bernie Sanders is doing here, right? So Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal, when they have these interviews, they tell people we just have to tell the story better. We have to change the messaging. They sit back as if they really believe that the American people forgot. Here's Bernie Sanders telling you we have short memories. No, my memory's fine. I remember what has been done, and I remember what has not been done. And I know what my bank account looks like. And I know how much groceries cost in the grocery store right now. So it's not that we don't remember. We remember. We just know it just wasn't enough. Now they got Bernie Sanders doing that same talking point.
The American Rescue Plan, which, as you recall, made sure that every working family in the country had $1,400 for husband, wife, and kids. We got money to hospitals. We extended unemployment benefits. Bottom line is that colossal piece of legislation, which I helped work on, helped pull this country out of that economic downturn faster, I think, than in any time in American history when we faced similar economic crises. That's a big deal.
You say that Joe Biden is a more progressive president than he was a U.S. senator, and you take some credit, along with other progressives, in pushing him more to the left. What is it that you think he's done that shows him being more progressive than he was as a senator?
I think
where did he move?
Well, first of all, I think what Biden, it's not that I pushed him or others pushed him. He ran an election for president, and he saw millions of people saying, hey, you know what? We want structural changes in this country. We're tired with little half measures. The country is in trouble. Let's have the courage to take on big money. He saw that. His staff saw that and said, okay.
Yeah, he saw that, Bernie, but he didn't uphold those things. Let me ask you a question. Where is the student loan debt cancellation? He messed that up. We explained to you how he didn't follow the right procedure in order to get that done so it wouldn't get held up in the courts. There was that. Where is the student loan debt cancellation for the students that went to HBCUs, which he said that he would cancel all of their debt if they made under $125,000 a year? Where is that? Where is that? Where's the $15 minimum wage? Where's the increase for the teachers? We remember what Joe Biden ran on. We also are able to see that these things have not been accomplished. These are some of these things he could have done by executive order, right? Codifying Roe v. Wade. The number of years and election cycles that the Democratic Party as a whole has slept on that is a slap in the face. It is absolutely disgusting. This could have happened under Obama on day one, which is what he promised. And then he changed his mind. So when you point out these issues and you say, well, why are these things happening? Again, it's the money. Bernie Sanders is not fooling me. Bernie Sanders has been a politician longer than I've been alive, if I remember correctly. So Bernie Sanders knows exactly how the game is played. He knows that these politicians and both of these parties are controlled by Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. Big money controls the parties, the people in the parties, and it controls the decision-making that happens in DC. That's why, I told you this before, typically the legislation that is passed has some type of corporate interest. The climate legislation that they were cheering about, which I'm going to show you something about that in just a second, that had corporate interests attached to it. That's why Joe Manchin approved it. That's why he signed off on it and said, yes, I support it. But Bernie knows that. But Bernie Sanders has already been spoken to. You see, he was already spoken to before he ran in 2020. He was spoken to before he ran in 2016. He know the drill. He knows at the end of the day, when he loses, he's going to have to back the corporate Democrat that he told you to vote against and to vote against all the corporate money and the billionaires and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he's still going to back those people, even though he told you not to back that type of interest. That's how Bernie gets to keep his seat. So the Democratic Party, the DNC goes, yeah, Bernie, let's let Bernie go do his little political movement thing. Let's go do. I don't think they expected it to get as big as it was. See, that's the thing. Let's let him go do that and da-da-da. And then at the end, you let him go do that, rile up the young people, and then they'll come right back to the Democratic Party anyway. And let him go have some fun and go do that over there. But the idea was never to allow Bernie Sanders to get any type of power. That's why Bernie still has his seat, because he knows how to play that game. The people who did not know how to play the game or didn't want to play that game are gone.
So the ARPA program, to my mind, the American Rescue Plan, was enormously significant. We passed the largest infrastructure bill in modern American history. It put a whole lot of people to work doing meaningful, important work. We finally, in a small way, in the Inflation Reduction Act, made, we got to do a lot more, taking on the pharmaceutical industry and beginning to lower prescription drug costs. So those are not small things.
But Senator, as Joe Biden gears up for 2024, he's done a number of things that seem to move back towards the center or even to the right. He's approved a massive drilling program in Alaska. He's cracking down on immigration. He opposes criminal justice reform in Washington, D.C.
I think the media has...
What's going on?
Well, I don't know what's going on. I think I surely disagree with him in terms of that Willow Project in Alaska. Absolutely.
Bernie Sanders knows. This is Chris Wallace letting you know, even he sees that Joe Biden has gone to the right on some of these issues, as particularly this climate issue. He's letting you know that even he sees that. Okay. Bernie's response, this is not truthful.
He's done a number of things that seem to move back towards the center or even to the right. He's approved a massive drilling program in Alaska. He's cracking down on immigration. He opposes criminal justice reform in Washington, D.C.
I think the media has...
What's going on?
Well, I don't know what's going on. I think...
He knows what's going on. I don't know what's going on. You know exactly what's going on. You know, again, that he's controlled by corporate interest. That is why he's making the decisions that he's making. How are you going to pass a climate legislation and then we're not even a year later and you're already planning to drill somewhere else? The Willow Project. Not even a year later after that climate legislation's passed. Now, why would he do that? I don't know. Maybe some of these companies, some of these oil companies, maybe they have lobbyists in DC. And those lobbyists are pushing these things to happen. We'll let you go ahead and have your climate legislation so you please the young people and they think you're doing something right. But at the same time, we need you to go do this drilling project here off of Alaska, the Willow Project. We need you to do that too. You can't serve. This is going to sound very funny because my grandma used to say this. My grandma is very religious, but this is in a different context. But I'm going to say it. You can't serve two masters. You can't sit here, Joe Biden, and say that you are going to serve the working people, especially the young people who will be impacted the most by climate change. So will African-American communities will be impacted the most by climate change. Lower income communities, poor communities will be impacted the most by climate change. And you can't sit here and say you're serving the working class people, and then at the same time, you are serving corporate interests as well. That's the problem. Bernie Sanders knows this. Oh, I don't know what's happening. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You know that these parties are controlled by corporate. You know that. You know they're controlled by the military-industrial complex. This is a bad faith response. Bad faith.
I surely disagree with him in terms of that Willow Project in Alaska. Absolutely. You cannot say, as he does, that climate change is the existential threat to this planet, which it is, and then approve massive oil exploration.
So is he trying?
And you can't say that either Bernie and yet sit up there and say you're still going to do everything you can in your power to make sure that Joe Biden's reelected, and he's the one who's doing this project. He's the one that approved of it. So if you feel that way, that climate is this existential threat to the American, well, to the world actually, but you still sitting up here willing to support the person who's continuing those actions, you can't sit on both sides either. Like, it's just, I don't understand this at all. It's almost like someone said something to Bernie and was just like, no, you can't, don't mention these things.
You think he's
I don't want to put, he has his reason. I don't know why. All I can tell you is I strongly oppose that.
Let me bring you onto another subject, which is age. The president is 80, you're 81, and according to the polls, most Democrats do not want to see him run again, and most of them, it's because of the issue of age. Is that a legitimate concern, given the fact that the president would be 86 years old at the end of a second term?
Before he responds, I want to correct something here about age, because mainstream media keeps saying that it's about age. It's not his age. It is cognitive decline. So when you have people answer this poll question about Joe Biden, in the back of my mind, I'm not thinking, oh, is he too old because of the number of his age? I'm thinking based on what I've seen from his behavior and his actions, him walking away from the podium, kind of wandering around, him forgetting who the prime minister is and going to the wrong person, him saying words that don't make sense, not being able to string sentences together unless they pump him up in some kind of way or shape or form. I am seeing cognitive decline. So the average American, when they're answering that question, that's probably what they're thinking about, not so much his number, because they knew his number when they voted for him for 2020. But the cognitive decline that is very obvious to the American people that Joe Biden is experiencing at this shape and time. And notice, Chris Wallace doesn't phrase it that way. Bernie won't phrase it that way. Most mainstream media won't say the words cognitive decline. And I'm pretty sure they've already been informed by the State Department not to say those words.
Obviously, I have a conflict of influence here. I think we should only elect old people. Look, I think it totally depends on the individual. I'm sure you know, people in their 80s and 90s who are sharp as a tack, and people who are 50, maybe not so much. It depends on the individual. Is age a factor? Yeah. Is it the only factor? Obviously
But you
not.
agree it is a factor.
It's a factor, but it depends on the individual. Of course it's a factor.
But you often don't know about the individual. In other words, somebody is 80 years old, he's doing fine, maybe not so great at 82 or 86.
That's a fair point.
Governor Nikki Haley, who's running for the Republican nomination for president, said that she thinks that anybody over the age of 75 who wants to run for president should have to take a mental competency test. When you went after her and accused her... I didn't go after her. I was asked the question. I think it's an absurd idea. Okay, and you accused her of ageism. Yeah. She fired back. Take a look.
We have to have mental competency tests for everyone over the age of 75. That's not personal. We've got seniors who can do many things. The reason why I'm saying that we need that is you should have transparency. Government's supposed to work for the people, not the other way around. Bernie Sanders lost his mind because I asked for that. He's exactly the reason we need it.
Lost my mind.
I have to say, you were growling as you were listening to that soundbite. I
don't think I quite lost my mind. Somebody asked me a question. I think what she said, look, think back. Nikki Haley is a former governor and a woman. How many years ago did people say, well, women can't be presidents? What happens if there's an attack during their period? You remember that? Women are just emotionally incapable. They're too emotional. That's the crap that we heard 40 or 50 years ago. So, no, I didn't quite lose my mind because she made that statement. I think it's unconstitutional. I think it's a dumb statement. And obviously, I don't support it.
But Senator, there is a difference.
No, I'm sorry. You have to be able to make rational, coherent decisions. Like, you have to be able to do that. Listen, Ronald Reagan apparently was experiencing some of this towards the end of his presidency as well. And it's just, listen, you got your finger on the trigger there. This is the president of the United States. This is a person that can make foreign policy decisions on their own and not necessarily need the approval of Congress to do so. You need to have that type of mental capacity to be able to make serious, life-changing world decisions. And I'm sorry, like some people may look at that and say, that's not fair, Sabby. You are running the country. You're putting millions of people's lives like in jeopardy. This is not a job at Burger King. You are not phone banking for people. You are not answering the telephones and, asking people, do you like your cable service? This is not that kind of job. And I think Bernie's being way too nice. Way too nice. He never brings up, and Bree pointed this out. I'll see if I can find it. He never brings up this issue that happened with the DNC fraud lawsuit. Nico House was the one not too long ago. We talked about that. He never brings up this issue. Why did he not bring this up? Why not? We'll go on a little bit here.
There's nothing inherent about the color of your skin or your gender. Let me just finish. Nothing inherent about those that raises serious questions about your competence. And an age by itself, a number, doesn't either. But candidates routinely share their medical tests.
Yeah.
Public health scientists say that it is common for seniors to experience some decline. Not all, but it's a real thing. So why is it so outrageous, the idea that somebody who's 80 years old and is going to run for president, that he should have to share a cognitive test?
Look, all that I'm saying, it is in our country, theoretically, it is the people who make a decision. If you think that President Biden is too old and you can't vote for him, fine, that's your view. I would suggest you look at the totality of the person. Take a look at the job that he or she does and make a decision.
Wouldn't it be good to have
the job? He's running the country. I don't know what else to call it.
more information in making that judgment?
I don't think you go around giving cognitive tests to all the candidates and just starting at people at 75. No.
All right.
Now, why is this important? There's more that I need to show you as well. He was also on CNN, and Bernie's basically making these rounds. Again, I feel like trying to protect Joe Biden at all costs because they know that Joe Biden is not doing well.
Senator, President Biden announced his campaign officially for re-election this week. He would be 86 years old by the end of his second term. You're 1 year older than President Biden. Is his age something that voters should consider in 2024?
Well, I think when you look at a candidate, you consider a lot. I think age is one thing. I think experience is another thing. I think your record that you have established is another thing. But to my mind, Donna, when you put it all together, what you have to look at is what does the candidate stand for? Which side are they on?
But what you stand for and what you do are two different things. Just because a candidate says they stand for something doesn't mean that once they're in office, they're actually going to try to implement policies to make those issues become a reality. And that's something that we've seen happen with a number of politicians, right? Joe Biden ran on a lot of things, and these things have not been accomplished. This is just ridiculous. I really think that Bernie Sanders at some point should issue a public apology to all the people who canvassed for him, phone bank for him, all the working class people who gave him $27 when they didn't have that money to really give to him. I really think he owes working class people in this country a big apology. Let's go back in and we'll finish up this video, and I have the climate one to show you.
Are they on the side of the billionaire class, or are they on the side of working people? Look, it is no great secret I ran against Biden. No great secret that he and I have strong differences of opinion. But when we live in a nation where you have a major political party, the Republican Party, where many, not all, but many of their leadership doesn't even believe in democracy. They maintain the myth that Trump won the last election. They're trying to keep people from voting. They're trying to deny women the right to control their own bodies. So that's a whole issue out there. If you believe in democracy, you want to see more people vote, not fewer people vote, I think the choice is pretty clear, and that choice is Biden. And second of all, what I do believe is the Democrats.
We don't have true democracy in this country. See, to him, it's just we want more people to vote. We don't have true democracy in this country. And Bernie Sanders knows that. If we had true democracy, there wouldn't have been a DNC fraud lawsuit. There wouldn't have been one. If we had true democracy, we would not have super delegates. If we had true democracy, the super delegates wouldn't have chosen to give states like West Virginia to Hillary Clinton, even though Bernie Sanders won every single county in that state. We do not have true democracy, and Bernie Sanders knows that from personal experience. That's what's so frustrating.
And the president have got to be stronger on working class issues. They've got to make it clear that we believe in a government that represents all, not just the few. Take on the greed of the insurance companies, the drug companies, Wall Street, all the big money interests, and start delivering for working class people. You do that, I think Biden is going to win in a landslide.
But Bernie Sanders is repeating the same rhetoric that he said for the past two election cycles. Get rid of the greed of Wall Street and all that. And he knows those things are not going to happen because they control and own the party. When we talk about some of the issues with Joe Biden's candidacy, we got to talk about Biden having a cheat sheet that shows he had advanced knowledge of journalist questions. I'm not going to read this entire article, but these are some of the things that are happening. A cheat sheet held by President Biden during a Wednesday press conference revealed that the 80-year-old commander-in-chief had advanced knowledge of a question from a journalist. So here's a picture here. You see this? LA Times, Courtney Sabramian, question 1. So you can see it right there, like in his hand. This is what I was trying to tell you. They're running cover for Joe Biden. They've been prepping him. Look, press conference prep Wednesday, April 26th, you, and then all the people that are listed there. So it seems like, and I've read this whole article, I just don't have time to read the whole thing now, but it seems like it's very clear that in some of these public appearances, they have been giving Joe Biden questions ahead of time. This is why I said before about the cognitive decline. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. And when we want to talk about, we can go to the part 2, Corey, when you're ready, to the second part of the videos. When you want to talk about the record, this so-called record that Joe Biden has, when they bring up the climate issue and they say we passed, this legislation is sweeping climate change, really. And then you talk about the drilling projects right outside of Texas. It's not just Alaska, right outside of Texas. And you talk about the Willow Project right outside of Alaska, which is also going to impact indigenous communities. And then you have an indigenous politician in DC who said it was okay. Everybody's bought off once they get in. Don't tell me differently, man. Everyone is bought off once they get in. I remember when she won, and it was so historic. First indigenous woman to be congresswoman, and she's willing to sell out her own people. She's willing to sell out her own people. How can you let the communities become poisoned? Her own people. Own. So last night at the White House Correspondents' dinner, there was a protest outside, a climate protest. Not one of those politicians who claim to care so much about climate change or claim to be these environmental activists, not one of them were with the protesters. You had 2 politicians show up from Tennessee, the 2 that were in the Tennessee State House. So the Tennessee 3, you guys know about them. They showed up, but the politicians in DC were not there. So we want to talk about Joe Biden's record. Where was Joe Biden during all of this? There are a couple of videos I want to show you.
folks, if you're checking in for the brunch, it's going to be straight down this sidewalk. Sir, excuse me.
Do your reporting. Our planet is burning. Do your reporting. Our planet is burning. Do your reporting. Our planet is burning. Do your reporting. The 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 planet is burning. Do your reporting. Our planet is burning. Do your reporting. Our planet is burning. Do your reporting. Do your reporting. Do your reporting. Our planet is burning. Do your reporting. Do your reporting. The planet is burning. Do your reporting. Do your reporting. Do your reporting. The planet is burning. Do your reporting. The planet is burning. Do your reporting. Do your reporting. Our planet is burning.
Calm down. Calm down. You need to leave. Private property.
Do your reporting.
Pretty sad to see that they ignored all these young people that they told to come out and vote for Joe Biden. Pretty sad, you know, he needed those votes, right? During the midterms, you guys come out and support the Democrats so that the Republicans don't win the Senate and don't win the House, even though Republicans won the House anyway. There were many people there. Look at this. Look at all the young people that came out saying, look, Joe Biden, why are you doing this to our world? All these people. So it says Biden in fossil fuels. You know, they know what's going on. The young people aren't stupid. They realize, wait a minute now, he passed this climate legislation, but he's still trying to drill. And so this is from Kai. He said, breaking, youth climate activists are non-violently blockading the White House Correspondents' dinner, turning away attendees and government SUVs. They are demanding President Biden keep his promise to end drilling on federal lands. Climate science demands it. We must end fossil fuels. And I'll show you some of the pictures here. And then here's another one. And here's all the people going to the dinner. They're all dressed up in their fancy little dresses. You know, these people live in another world. They really do. It's like they don't want to pay attention to what is happening around them. They don't care about these issues for the most part. They try to pander to certain communities and pretend like they care about these issues so that they can get reelected. Most of these people walking into this event right now are just there to rub elbows with people like John Legend so they can take pictures and go back home and tell their friends, look, I got to meet John and Chrissy. Most of those people don't care about anything real. They just want to go there and rub elbows with people. That's what this is about for a lot of them. I just feel so sorry for all these young people because they actually believed Joe Biden. They actually believed the Democratic Party. I feel so sorry for these people. And I believe I have one more to show as well. Now, this is from JB. JB pointed this out. The fact that John Legend and Chrissy Teigen walked past climate activists to support a pro-corporate, pro-pollution president tells you everything you need to know. Nothing they say regarding climate change should be taken seriously anymore. Frauds. And here's that video here.
Stand with us! Hey, excuse me. nominate for family justice in Chicago. How you doing? Take a place, nephew. Planet is dying! Planet is dying! Planet is dying! The planet is dying!
You see, people like John Legend and Chrissy Teigen, like they don't care. John Legend wrote a song called Ordinary People. He said, we're just ordinary people. They're not. He's not an ordinary person. They're rich. They're celebrities. And that's why they can just walk past the group of climate activists as if they don't matter. Because they don't really care. They're pandering to the people. So when you have people like these celebrities that say, we have to care about the environment, we have to care about the climate, pay attention. Do you ever see them at these activities when these things happen? Do they come to any of these protests? They come to any of these climate events? Do they come to any of the climate action talks or anything like that? Do they? No, they trying to walk inside. They want to rub elbows with people like Joe Biden. That's all it is about. People just want to be with other big name people. And they just want to be seen just for the purpose of being seen. They don't really care about this issue. And you can see the difference between the people who are actually activists and the ones who are just trying to be seen. So when Bernie Sanders talks about Joe Biden's record and Chris Wallace asked him about the climate issue, how Joe Biden has moved further actually to the right and not to the left, I can point and say the same thing. Bernie Sanders, where were you? Where were you? Why weren't you out there with those climate activists? They're all controlled. They're all bought. They like going to their fancy dinners. They like having their fancy apartments, their multiple homes. First year Congress, you're making what, $170,000 a year? I've never made $170,000 a year. I've never made $100,000 a year. Just imagine how quickly that can go to someone's head and how quickly they say to themselves, I don't want to go back to the place that I was, especially if you're someone who came from working class or poverty like Maxwell Frost or like Cori Bush. The climate catastrophe is more important than having a dinner with Joe Biden. People are so confused. They're all over the place. Thank you for the super chat, Jonathan. Bernie lives in fear. Thank you for the super chat, Random Nobody. Bernie is such a serpent. Thank you for the super chat 208 or 2008 B. Scott. The money for student loan cancellation and everything else went to Ukraine, I guess, but I'm supposed to vote for Jim Crow Joe because fascism. Thank you for the super chat, Colin. Funny how Bernie writes a book about being okay to be angry about capitalism and endorses the guy who's in bed with it. Ding, 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 ding. Thank you for the super chat. Yep, X. Joe also has been caught with cheat sheets telling him how to sit down. It's crazy, man. Like, thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. Democrats are repealing the First Amendment and rigging primaries, targeting journalists. They don't believe in democracy. No, they do not. And thank you for the super chat, Colin. Corey rocks. And thank you, Random Nobody. They act like they're royalty going to their social club dinner. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. It couldn't be me. I couldn't just turn away. Like, I would have been outside, not inside. You know, it reminds me of the AOC Met Gala dress issue. Being inside instead of outside with the protesters. Let me go ahead and take that comment on Rockfin. I think that's Rockfin you have down there, Eric. Yeah. Shout out to Justin for being a Sabby member for 5 months. Whoop, whoop. It says, gay 42-year-old from Tennessee. It's been a struggle. Glad I finally found my people. RBN, Do Dissidents, Jimmy, and few more. Thanks. We appreciate you. FFT. Thank you. And thank you for the tip, Roger. BND, Bank of North Dakota, established June 1919. That guy was trying to make the argument against regulations by saying we had substantial regulations and they have not worked. What a damn lie. Yes, John Pierpont Morgan from the House of Morgan. I learned about that on The Men Who Made America. Didn't know about that Harlem Banks, though. Yes. And thank you for the tip as well. Obama did warn us about China going to end up top, but his solution, the TPP, was not the solution, which would have sped up outsourcing of manufacturing, should have handed GM over to the workers, and encouraged in the TPP worker cooperative. I always cracked up on the part where the captain said, and I'll form the head. No comment there, Roger. Thank you for this one as well. Hillary may or may have not had brought my Gen X to heel, but she sure as hell brought Bernie Sanders to heel, bend the knee. Bernie Sanders bent the knee. In a parallel universe with no parties, this interview would have went different. Good policies don't need a politician to argue for it. It sells itself. Child tax care credit didn't need to be explained. People felt it, yet they put expiration date on it. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, we are going to wound up here with New Hampshire. I'll at least get started with one of them for New Hampshire. Ballot initiative results from November 2022, and then I'll have to finish the rest. There is only one, so I might be able to finish this time. New Hampshire, ballot initiatives. Ding, 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 ding. All right. In the state of New Hampshire does not allow its voters the option to place initiatives or referendums on the ballot, be they to pass their own laws or ratify their own amendments to the New Hampshire Constitution. Only the legislator can place laws independent of voter involvement and place initiatives on the ballot using a legislative referred constitutional amendment for voters to ratify amending the legislative initiatives within the New Hampshire Constitution. They had one measure. It's called New Hampshire Constitutional Convention question. A yes vote supported holding a state constitutional convention. This failed by 66.11%. Well, there was no campaign finance money to support or oppose this measure. Note from Roger here, yes, usually these things are avoided out of fear that backed by special interest. So that did not go too well. Here's another one. New Hampshire question 1, abolish office of register of probate amendment. This is a second one we've seen. It was another state that had this similar question. A yes vote supported eliminating the register of probate offices and references to it within the New Hampshire Constitution. This measure also failed by 62.88%. Note this here. New Hampshire requires 66% to amend, so it will not be amended there. It says, in the past, New Hampshire's Register of Probate Office handled issues such as simple wills. After changes were made to New Hampshire's court system in 2011, certain duties were removed from the Register of Probate. As of 2022, the current role of this office was to preserve files that have the potential for historical significance. What would this amendment have done? The amendment would have abolished the Office of Register of Probate and would have removed all references from the Register of Probate from the state constitution. Who supported this? State Representative Norman Silber. One of the arguments was feedback from many New Hampshire residents after encountering very limited assistance at the courthouse is that they have been advised to seek an attorney if they are unable to properly submit the necessary information. If we still had functioning registers of probate to help, most residents would not have to deal with attorneys and their associated legal fees. Interesting take there. And that was New Hampshire. That was a very quick one. Now tomorrow, I won't be live on here. You know, I take Monday off, but I am speaking at the May Day event in Boston tomorrow at 5 p.m.-ish. There's a bunch of speakers, but we're streaming it on RBN because RBN did sponsor or choose to be a sponsor for the event. So 4:45 p.m. Eastern time, you'll see that live stream of me on the ground at the May Day rally. There's going to be a lot of speeches there. There's going to be unions there, organizers there as well. They're giving speeches as well as myself. So that'll be there. There's going to be a packed day tomorrow for RBN. There's that. Then there's a stream with Nick, CJ, Do Dissidents, and Hard Lens in the evening. And then there's an earlier stream too, I think, before mine. I have to go back and double check. Anyway, it'll be a busy day over there tomorrow. But May Day rally tomorrow in Boston. I will be at the Boston Common location. There's multiple locations for this rally across the city. So I'll be there to speak about that. I do have to get going. I have a meeting to go to, but I want to head out with this. Corey, if we can bring back up the first vids on Type VNC. We're going to head out with this video. For those of you that came in later, I think it's pretty fun. So let's head out with some fun. And here we go. Brics.
America, is you okay? Don't touch me. Don't fucking touch me, man. For I swear to God. Watch this. Watch this. For all that crying and looking sad and moping around shit, that ain't gonna stop shit, G. We still going through with the plan, okay? It ain't nothing personal. We just don't want to fuck with you no more, G. Like, we ain't fucking with you no more. None of us is. Yeah, because me personally, I never fuck with you again after what you did to my people. Oh my God. South Africa, Britain got down on your ass too. They colonized the fuck out of you and they still get to be part of your Brics group. Ain't that what the B stand for, Britain? Who you talking about? Bitch, I'm Brazil, not Britain. Big B's. Fuck you talking about? Wrong bitch. I ain't colonized her. And besides, I ain't the one that be colonizing. I, unfortunately, was the one that was getting colonized. Girl, they got you too? Girl, yeah, them damn Portuguese got a hold of my ass and tried to turn me every which way but loose. For what? This was back in about 1500. What that was, India? About 1500? Mm-hmm. They ass was originally on their way over here to me, but then they had saw Brazil and was like, shit, we just gonna settle over here. So they, you know what I'm saying, they did what they did. They did their colonizing shit. They did that. You know what I'm saying? Fucked up, gave her a new name, and that was that. So your real name ain't Brazil? Girl, I don't even look like no Brazil. Ain't never met a Brazil in my life. Y'all ever heard of one? I mean, when it comes to this colonizing shit, I done it all, G. I done did the colonizing, and I done been colonized. It really just depends on how you look at it, y'all. Well, y'all talking all this brick stuff and basically saying, fuck me, so I feel real colonized right now. Yeah, I feel like y'all all trying to gang up and colonize me. I'm scared for my safety, for the safety of my people, for the safety of my country. Because I don't know what y'all on no more. I can't trust you. I can't trust none of y'all. He do this every time, G. Every time he do this. I want to fight. Oh, my God. Here you go. That's your boy. That's your boy. That's your boy. He do this all the time. Now he want to go to war. Now he Mr. Tough Guy. I told y'all he was going to do this. If I can't be down with y'all, if y'all saying I can't be part of the Brics, then I want to go to war. Simple as that. Bro, ain't nobody finna keep fighting your ass. China and Russia, I want my one. Period. Well, let's fucking do it then, because I'm tired of your ass. I already let you slide when it came to Ukraine, but if you want it, then come on. Let's just jump him, y'all. Yeah, because I just got my head done, and I ain't got time for all that fighting shit. Just send the missiles.
All right, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.